Interlude. Part 2 of 4. Alexia snickered as her mates left the house to chase Conrad through the woods. Left alone with the fillies, she closed the book to lay her head down so she could look upon her children. The sight of Aurora and Violet always warmed Toon's heart. I don't know if it's a natural part of motherhood or me being a bit more deviant, but I prefer nursing over bottle feeding when I can. To literally give of myself to make my daughters stronger, isn't that what any mother should want to do? With this being her last month off from her work as a training instructor, she knew she wouldn't be able to nurse as often as needed. Well, despite Wilder's assurances, I'm still not buying any of that formula. That sort of thing takes years if not decades to get it right, not a month. I'll just have to fill the bottles myself, or find a sitter who can wet nurse. Casting her thoughts aside, she laid there, silently watching her suckling foals. I'm really not looking forward to breaking the news to Qbert and my folks on Thursday. At least Q knew I was a mare already, but trying to convince mom and dad their son is now a mother of two isn't going to be fun or easy, let alone that I'm a different species. Plus we're going to talk with Crimmy's folks a week after that. Alexia noticed Violet was done feeding and grabbed a nearby cloth so she could burp her. Even if you two can't say you're blood relatives anymore, given the species difference and whatnot, you still deserve to know your grandparents. All of their grandparents, a familiar voice called out from her right ear. Toon looked around the room, her ears swiveling to try and catch the source. Hello. Violet chose that moment to belch, but instead of just air, a white wispy puff of cloud came out and circled around both ponies' heads before congealing into an ethereal version of Discord's head. I thought I'd stop by to see how my favorite daughter was doing. It took the alicorn a moment to realize who was speaking, and was then unsure of how to react to his declaration. You see me as a daughter. Is it really that big of a surprise, my dear? The disembodied head replied as it sailed lazily around her. Discord's avatar gazed upon Alexia's foals. Aurora was too busy nursing to notice, but Violet giggled as she tried to swipe at the flying wisp of smoke. I never touched your soul, but the body you inhabit was of my own creation. Alexia fought to find the right words. I understand you turned me into a pony and I can't tell you how grateful I am for that, but that's just it. You turned me into a pony, you didn't create me. Discord briefly contemplated washing her mind to make the silver mare think of him as her father. No. I have a good rapport going with these earthling ponies. Falling back into old habits would ruin it. You can't blame an old soul for getting sentimental. His wispy features turning a dark grey and wrinkly, causing Spark to try even harder to swat the avatar with her hooves. Toon felt better about him giving up the claim. I guess not. I take it you came to see me for a reason. Reasons, he complained as he moved over to spy on Aurora, who was finally done eating. Must I really need a reason to visit anymore? The cautious mother took the little Pegasus to burp her as well. Well, no, it's just I know it can't be easy to keep communicating with me. Not unless you have an entangled book like the tome is. Discord remained silent for a lengthy pause as he let Violet swat at his incorporeal face. The little unicorn laughed manically every time his long face was destroyed and reformed. Alexia was the only mother in existence who had no qualms about letting him see children up close. She knew he was powerful and knew of his past on Equestria, but with all that he had given her she felt friendship was the best response. I'd offer you some of our scotch, but I don't think you could drink it as a wisp. I've never heard of scotch, but in either case you'd be right. Trinity's ambient magic was barely strong enough to support Discord's avatar, and trying to do anything but act like smoke would be impossible. Having satisfied his curiosity about his favorite princess's children, he focused on her. I did come here for a reason. To give you a warning about your fall, and how you bring Earth down with you. The flippancy of his tone made her question his seriousness. So the dark side is stronger after all. It has its perks, he replied as he coiled around the room. But so does the light. He looked at her with a teasing expression. The real problem is that good guys are too scared to use the dark, and the evil ones scoff at the light as unworthy. The tricky part is learning how to wield both. Alexia watched the two fillies chase after Discord as he did slow laps around the alicorn, all the while making silly faces at the squealing foals. Always slow enough for one of the twins to swat or bite him before moving on. I'm not sure what you're trying to tell me. Oh. Just musing aloud is all, he replied cryptically. She eyed him warily. Then what's all this talk about me falling and taking Earth with me? He paused near Toon's belly with a contemplative look on his face. Did I say something like that? His hesitation allowed Violet to try and bite the cloudy avatar, but the taste of it soured in her mouth and she spat the wisps of cloud back out with a cough. I suppose I did. He reformed his avatar to look at the mare. Do you know, he paused again before a sad chuckle escaped his ethereal lips. No. I said I would help you once and leave you to your fate, and that is exactly what I'll do. But I will give you this one piece of advice. He flew around Alexia's head a few times before stopping to whisper into her right ear. When an immortal's heart is broken, her pain becomes the world's pain. He pushed up and away from her, with Toon turning to face his retreating avatar. What do you mean by that? Discord's voice became reedy and weak as the wisp lost cohesion. Ask about the lunacy phenomena. What do you mean about an immortal? She called out with a raised hoof, only to be met with silence as the avatar vanished. She was left with far more questions than she was comfortable with and only looked away from the spot he disappeared from when she heard Sky crying because Spark was pulling on her wing to try and eat it. Toon cooed while pulling the two infants apart. She grabbed a chew toy from the table and gave it to Violet while soothing Aurora's overextended wing. The sniffling Pegasus quieted down after receiving a pacifier and a long hug. All right, you two, play nice. She set the alabaster Pegasus back down and the fillies started crawling over each other. Discord's warning played through Alexia's mind as she absently watched her daughters play. Lunacy, an immortal. He never said anything about doing anything other than turning humans into ponies, so I doubt it's something he did. Unless he actually did create something other than ponies on Earth. Toon watched the fillies get into an argument over the squeaky yellow and black bee plush toy. Could he have been referring to me as the immortal though? The fillies decided to chew on the toy together. She idly recalled her gunshot wounds and studied her long-since healed wing. Immortals don't get injured from mundane weapons. Her eyes looked up to the right. Well, okay, all I have to go on with immortals is theology and Hollywood, so maybe some do. But I can't be one. I've got all three tribes' magic in me, sure, but that doesn't make me immortal. Violet decided Aurora's ear looked better than the toy and let go of the plastic bee to latch onto her sister's left ear. Sky retaliated by going after Spark's right forelegs fetlock. Alexia saw they were doing no real harm to each other and let them be. Maybe the immortality thing is a metaphor for something else. Something to do with this lunacy, and I bet it's a reference only a native of Equus would know. She brought the book back and opened to the guard page. As it had been for the past 7 weeks, Twilight was absent. Only a single letter detailing the Lavender Princess was overseeing an archaeological expedition to the frozen north surrounding the Crystal Empire, and a murky date of her return in roughly 4 months' time was all Toon had. That was shortly before the twins' birthday. Alexia watched the two girls fall asleep, one with drool all over her leg, with the other having it run down from her ear. The scene caused her to cringe mirthfully and pulled them apart. We don't need slobber pooling in your ear now. Both fillies stretched and reached for their mother, so she stood up and placed them on her back. Before she could take them upstairs to the crib, her phone rang. Grabbing it in her magic and pulling it from the top of the table, she checked the caller before answering it. What can I do for you, Director? Thompson's voice was curt. Are you watching CNN? The alicorn's brow furrowed as she took the remote in her magic and flicked the news on and turned the volume up. A stone-faced balding man appeared with a headliner that read, Botswanian government collapses. Experts are saying the country of Botswana has finally collapsed as of yesterday. Widespread food poisoning, tainted drinking water, and a lethal pandemic across all major cities along with insufficient foreign relief aid have destroyed all public confidence in the local parliament. The picture switched from the news anchor to video footage of rioting civilians with little to no police or military personnel around to keep order. While the alicorn couldn't understand the language, it was clear that many people were ransacking Red Cross food trucks, marketplaces, and government buildings. The UN has made it clear that it will not stop until local hysteria and civil order are back under control. However, given that this situation has been progressing for 4 months now, it is unlikely that public unrest will be resolved anytime soon. The Silver Mare still had the phone up to her ear, and Thompson spoke up as soon as the broadcast moved on to a different story. Stories like that have been on the upswing for close to a month now, but the agency's been getting similar reports from every continent except the Americas and Europe. Feeling that the television was no longer needed, she turned the disquieting news off and made her way to the stairs to drop the Foles off in their cribs. "Do you have any leads on the culprits?" "My hunch tells me it's the Corridosanites, but enough of the brass remains unconvinced to act on it. They believe the cult is limited to the Americas and Western Europe. Mass poisoning and starvation doesn't seem like the same modus operandi for the same group that laid siege to the Capitol." His tone was a little crestfallen with his theory finding another hole. "And the cult did lay claim to the siege of both DC and Rocky Springs, but no one has come forward to claim responsibility for the poisonings." She kissed her daughters before tucking them into bed, glad that they were safe from the world's troubles. "Speaking of which, how much prestige did they get from the underworld for claiming responsibility for the siege?" Between having DC in flames plastered over every news network in the world and with a damaged White House being the centerpiece? Incalculable. The other anti-American extremists out there won't give a damn what the cult's ultimate objective is, they won the hearts and minds of the underworld. Needless to say, it's making our job of weeding them out all the more difficult. Toon closed the door to let her foals sleep in peace. "As much as we want to get back out there, we can't operate in the field until Crimson's pregnancy is over." He paused for a bit. "I wouldn't ask you to split the herd up for an assignment anyway. As much as I need lone operatives, I can't argue with those four's track record. As far as the higher-ups are concerned, lending your expertise to advanced training is more crucial for the time being. But I want you to stay informed of global events from here on. There may come a time soon when I'll need to pull you off the instructor cadre." Alexia stared out of the window into the setting sun. Gnawing trepidation sat in her gut. Both for the declining situations abroad, and from Discord's warning. "I wouldn't doubt it." Asterisk. The flight over to Kansas City and subsequent drive to a hotel prior to meeting with Toon's parents was uneventful. Aside from the twins calling far more attention to themselves than human children would. As Alexia predicted, revealing the existence of adult ponies was one thing, but the presence of foals hit home to all of their fellow passengers and witnesses in the Wheeler downtown airport that humans' new ally was to be a permanent addition to society. Again, Toon knew Violet Spark and Aurora Sky were symbols, and that she didn't have to go out of her way, even in the slightest, to project that image. While the passing human's response was generally positive, her thoughts kept drifting towards Discord's warning. It kept her mostly silent on the plane. The herd was used to her silence, but generally only because she was studying, not brooding. As the herd was walking towards the baggage claim, Conrad didn't want to see her silently brood anymore and rubbed his head against her to get Toon's attention. "Hey sourpuss! You going to join the world of the living?" She responded to his touch with a small smile. "Sorry. Just thinking about what Discord said." "I know. You've been doing that all week." She apologized again. Violet caused the Silver Mare to laugh as the filly started gumming her father's ear while she sat on his head. Sky was sleeping between his wings. "It's just I can't help but think that he was referring to me when he said immortal's pain." She stopped watching her unicorn daughter's cannibalistic habits to look at her mate. "I skimmed over Equestria's history. Celestia and Luna have been alive for well over 1,000 years. And they're both alicorns," she said at length. She was speaking in Equish so the passing humans wouldn't understand, but the herd could. It was Crimson who spoke next. So you really think you're immortal? I don't know what to think, the Azure and Silver Alicorn replied with a sadness at the thought of outliving everyone. Loki, who had been walking behind everyone, ran to be in front and then started walking backwards. What makes you so sure that Alicornhood equals immortality? Maybe those two had to get something else done to them to go all demigod mode. Conrad nodded in agreement. Yet. Besides, you were badly injured from a couple of bullets. You'd make a horrible goddess if a piece of bad cheese could counter immortality. Gee, thanks. The stallion's teasing got a more genuine smile out of her. End of part 2.